When it comes to getting money out of politics, the American people are more united than on perhaps any other issue. Take a look at this new Bloomberg poll saying that 78% of those responding said that the Citizens United ruling should be overturned.
Wow,
78%.
That's big news.
Now, sometimes you get that big number overall, and then when you break it down by the parties, it doesn't look as good. But this time, it actually even looks better, I think. Republicans opposed Citizens United 80% to 18%.
Wow. Wow. That's more than half.
That's more.
Let the record note that a giant room full of progressives just applauded Republicans.
Democrats opposed it 83% to 13%, and independents 71% to 22%. What the hell, independents?
There's some jackass libertarians in there.
Probably.
And I'm sorry, if there are any libertarians here, I met you.
Wait a minute.
80% and 83%.
So now, obviously, this is giant news because the media is always looking for one thing we agree on, right? Like, oh, there's such always fighting and stuff. And finally, we found it, and we can finally get, because then the Republicans and Democrats can work together, they can pass a piece of legislation that's super important that the country cares a lot about, right? And thank God. So, John, now you're going to tell me how much the media covered this, right? I mean, it must have been wall-to-wall coverage.
It was on Media Matters, and I did a video about it on my channel. And that's pretty much it.
The poll came out September 28th.
We're kidding.
Yeah.
I see, Johnny, I missed your show. I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, then you're like most people. But anyway, yeah, it seems like something like 78%, you know, being in favor of overturning Citizens United, over 80% in favor of expanding background checks. If the American people agree on something, nobody's interested anymore
Also,
for some reason.
We're in the middle of the debate season. Like, it couldn't be more topical either. Like, it's just, there's a presidential campaign.
Don Lemon, bring it up.
Yeah.
And money in politics and the corruption that it leads to finishes number one or number two in almost every poll in terms of issues that Americans care most about. So now let me tell you the amount of coverage that it received on primetime nightly news on ABC, CBS, NBC, and PBS. Not one story.
God.
Zero. Yeah. Zero. But wait. To be fair, the Sunday talk shows, though, zero stories.
Yeah.
Not one.
It's almost like they're part of the problem.
Yeah. Well, look, I think it's a great number, but I think that you guys are acting like Citizens United was significant, like it really changed anything. Like, for instance, it might be possible that in 2014, the top 100 donors to super PACs spent almost as much as all 4.75 million small donors combined.
Jesus.
But nothing really changed after Citizens United.
Now, can you imagine?
200 people have bankrolled 60% of all super PAC spending since 2010, since the division. 200 people.
200.
Okay, so, you know,
There's
every once in a while...
200 people in this room.
Yeah, I know, right? You guys could have swung the election if you were all billionaires. Not swung the election, owned the election.
Yeah.
And so every once in a while, people will say, hey, you know, on both sides, Jeb Bush, Hillary Clinton, you guys seem beholden to the big donors. Even Trump says that to Bush and others, because you take money in giant chunks from the big donors. They go, no, I got a lot of small donors. It's lots of small donors. It's true. There's 4.75 million small donors, but all of them combined equal only 100 large donors. So, I mean, this is, in a lot of ways, worse than Iran and worse than China, because the Politburo in China is larger than 200 people, okay? The mullahs that run Iran are in the ballpark of about 100 to 200 people. So the people who make decisions in a dictatorial form of government in Iran, who's kidding about their elections, right? Are a small group of people that happen to be mullahs. In China, it's a small group of people who happen to be communist leadership. In our country, it's a small group of people who happen to be billionaires, and they run our elections. They decide who wins, who loses. They decide the choices that we get to make. We're not making those choices. Just like the Politburo in China, just like the mullahs in Iran, they say, these are your choices. Now, you will choose among our selected candidates.
Well, the one good thing coming out of that is you were comparing it to various countries, but I actually think of Russia today, which everyone points out as an oligarchy. They actually have perhaps a more democratic version of our system, because I think they probably don't even have that many.
Yeah,
it's the same sort of system, basically.
If you pay,
less money, though.
The last story we just did, Kevin McCarthy, the guy who got rid of him, was a fundraiser from Chicago, this guy Bayer, right? So he's the one who said, I'm pissed off. I got to take control of this fucking speakership. And so he did. And he got rid of him. He's a money guy. Nobody even knows who he is. Yeah. Just like when it was reported that Joe Biden is really serious because he had a meeting with a hedge fund guy or a big donor, and that signals that shit is serious because a money guy decided the vice president could run for president.
Yeah.
He didn't even know him. It was reported that Joe Biden didn't even know this guy, but he had a meeting with him, and he's going to give an anointing to him that now you can go, the vice fucking president.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Right. Now, think about that, right? Isn't it, for all the skeptics out there, for all the Washington media losers who go out there and pretend that there's noble politicians and the honorable gentlemen debating on policy issues, all the frauds that are in the mainstream media, okay? So here it is. 80% of Democrats agree. 80% of Republicans agree. They agree. It's among the top 2 issues in the country. Some usually comes in number 1 when the economy's a real mess. It comes in number 2, and we have complete agreement on it.
Yeah.
And there's not a single person in Washington doing a goddamn thing about it. Right? Isn't that an amazing story? And the amount of coverage it receives is nothing. Because understand this: the money that they spend in politics, those billions of dollars, predominantly go where? They go to television.
Yeah.
They go to advertising on television. So it's not like Chuck Todd thinks, oh, I'm going to make more money. Nobody ever pulled him into a room filled with cigar smoke and said, hey, Chuck, this is the way it works, okay? We're all going to make money, you see? Okay?
Yeah.
That's a great impression.
Thank you. Okay. But the people at the top know exactly where their revenue comes from. They're businessmen. They're not stupid. They're not like, oh, gee, where did this $2 billion show up from? I can't figure it out, right? So then they make decisions that rain down on the rest of the bureaucracy. And if you step out of line and you start talking about this, you're gone. You're gone. And then the message is sent, hey, Chuck, everybody else, shh.
Yeah.
Don't talk about it, otherwise you won't get your $1 million check anymore.
So I have a question for you then, because what they're doing right now, not reporting the story, that's a fairly passive act. The story's there, they don't want to talk about it. But they don't stop there, they go active. They're actually going to stop this sort of message from getting out there. So 80% of the American public, Republicans specifically, want money out of politics. Now there's someone who's running, several, but one specifically who's running in the Democratic side to do just that. And is he going to be allowed at the debate? Presently, CNN has no interest, despite the fact that he's raised a significant amount of money. He's got the support of some of the other people who are going to be there, but they're actually barring him from being involved in the debate because he would bring up exactly this sort of issue.
So understand what's going on there. So Hillary Clinton and some of the other candidates feign interest in this issue and say that they would do something about it. I don't believe them for a second. Bernie Sanders, I believe, genuinely does want to do something about it. I don't think he has a great plan on it, but I believe it. Okay. Now, Larry Lessig says, my whole campaign is about this issue, okay? And I'm going to run on this issue alone. They said, all right, well, that's okay. I hear you. You raised $1 million. I mean, we told you that it's all about the money. And so we said you have to raise a certain amount of money for us to take you seriously. And you raised it. You raised $1 million. Great. Now all you got to do is get 1% of the polls, and then we'll allow you in the debate. And they said, okay, great. Because in the last poll that was taken, he was at 1%. Perfect. Everything's going to work out. Then you know what they did? The media organizations took his name out of the polls. They took his name out of the polls. Oh, sorry, you didn't get 1% because we didn't put your name in. Okay, so he's not going to be at the Democratic debate in Las Vegas. So again, I don't think it's a smoke-filled room. I don't think they got together and said, okay, let's figure out how to screw Larry Lessig.
Yeah.
I don't think that's how their decision-making goes. But the money up top, it rains down on them all in ways that they have no idea about.
You know, the smoke-filled room was better. There was nothing wrong with the smoke-filled room. The smoke-filled room would get reported on. Reporters were sometimes in the smoke-filled room. That was okay. That was the process. Politics is ugly, and most people don't understand it. That's how it got done. Those were where deals were made, and those deals afterwards could be figured out. These deals can't really be figured out.
Yeah.
And so let me say one more thing about this. Wolfpack. So are you going to rely on politicians to get money out of politics? No. Does it look like they're inclined in that direction? No. I mean, if a politician, if we lived in an actual democracy, had 80% of his base or 83% of his base say, God damn it, do something about this, and he was like, yeah, I don't care. okay? If we lived in a democracy, he'd be a goner, right? He'd be a goner. He said, "What? Are you kidding me? Can you imagine if a Republican said, nah, gun control, I don't care. They take our guns away, who cares, right? Goner, right? Pro-life, who cares? Let them have abortions. Goner, right? But actually, more Republicans want money out of politics than either one of those issues. But they're not goners. They don't do anything because we don't live in a democracy. It's not that politicians are not the answer. You think the media is going to do anything? Well, they just told you. We're not going to do a goddamn thing about it. In fact, we're going to actively hide it, right? So the only answer is we rise up together, okay? And when we rise up together, we roar and we make them do something about it. And so don't get discouraged. Every single amendment we've had in this country has come from a room like this, where people were angry and they didn't want to take it anymore. And whether it was Republicans or Democrats back then, they got together and said, that's it. If you don't want to do it, we're going to do it. We're going to make you do it. And so that's exactly what we're going to do. I'd have you guys chant Wolfpack, but I think Ben would get mad.
I'd leave.
Wolf-pack.com. Let's rise up together. We're going to shock them with how strong we're going to be together.